friends. Welcome to the Ancient Health Podcast, where East meets West. I'm your host, Dr. Chris Motley. And today I just met a good friend, and it's Emily Brown. And she is a functional nutrition expert. She's also an expert in one of my favorite subjects, is epigenetics, which I don't claim to know too much about, but I've done some classes in it. But we're going to talk with Emily about it. But Emily, thank you so much for joining us here today. Really appreciate it.
It's a pleasure, Dr. Motley. Thank you for having me. I'm very, very excited.
Oh, this is going to be a great combo. And I think for everybody that's out there, remember on this podcast, we want you guys to get every ounce of information out of this. And one thing I love about Emily's Instagram feed or social media and her website is that we were just talking about her life raised on a farm. We're going to get into that. But you can see in her information, it has everything to do with food sensitivities and energy levels. It has to do with your sleep habits. We're going to get into this. But before I start yapping and start babbling to everybody out there and bore you guys to death, Emily, we want to know about you because we want to promote you and what you stand for. How did you end up doing what you do, loving what you love, and I like a little backdrop. I love people's stories. Like how did it all start?
Well, ironically enough, I used to be an extremely picky eater, like even get the parsley off of the buttered pasta. There must not be greens on it. So growing up on a farm, that was much to my parents' chagrin, and it makes me cringe even thinking about it. So the road here has been quite circuitous, but I was getting my master's in exercise physiology and nutrition. And during that time, my mom got her 23andMe, as most people did. And part of her results that came back was, she didn't have the actinin 3 gene. She's lacking that power protein. That means you're not going to be suited for sprinting and power resistance style exercises. So she interpreted that as, great, I'm a walker. I love to walk. Let's just keep on walking. Well, when you don't take in the whole picture, she's a menopausal woman. Her osteopenia is coming into the picture, her sarcopenia. So there was no person better, no demographic better that needs to kind of offset that genetic deficiency really and lean into resistance training. So there was a huge disconnect with the way people were interpreting their genetic information. And it was going to be to her, it was going to be injurious to her, especially at that time, life stage and age of hers. So we've got her on a resistance training program and she's feeling better than ever. And that's really where the impetus came from.
Wow. So when you learned that about your mom, you got genetic tests. You started to get really interested in genetic testing because is there information that people out there, they could learn so much about themselves, like with genetic testing? Like when you started to get into exercise physiology, were you just intrigued by the information that genetics could bring?
Absolutely. It blew the top off. It really is, that rocked my socks. So that was about 10 years ago when that all happened. And I was very myopically focused on genetics and how we can use our genetic template to better our lives. But now the testing has really evolved, and now we get to look at the methylation patterns around the genes. The 98% that was thought to be junk DNA is now really where all the magic happens. And so now the testing goes beyond just genetics, but how are your genetics functioning based on the life you've lived, based on how you've moved and what you've eaten, your social connections, your spirituality, your organ health, your emotional health, which I know you dive deep into, and I love that. And so that epigenetic style testing is really kind of the cool stuff currently.
So it's amazing because like you're saying, like, I guess geneticists or scientists would say 98% of what was once thought like junk in our DNA, like that's just bystander, like whatever, is like considered to have lots of information. And people would ask this though too, I would think, when they say, okay, there's a lot of info. You said methylation, and like what are some of like the basic things? Are we talking like weight loss? Like what are things people could learn from their genes? Like if they got a gene report, they're going to say, Emily, what am I really going to learn from this that really could help me? Because people out there listening, like, gene report, like what is it going to happen? What are some of the main things you love to look at in a gene report?
Absolutely methylation. So I think I've heard you talk about you have a couple methylation mutations that aren't optimal. No, same with me, same with my detox patterns, same with my estrogen and dopamine metabolism.
Mm,
I can learn a lot there. What gets me hyper, um, too much dopamine is not a good thing. So when I have a buildup, yes, it can be excitatory, but too much of a good thing is a bad thing. So if you
mhm,
learn about that gene, you're predisposed to elevated dopamine, which can also then put you at risk of elevated estrogen. Now I pull in all of these lifestyle interventions. How do I fortify joy and cultivate dopamine in a healthy way and make sure I have the right nutrition like vitamins and minerals for that dopamine production? And when we talk about my test in a second, you'll see this in real time. And then
mhm.
also, how do I make sure I don't lean towards that estrogen dominance like my body is want to do? So there's a lot you can learn in terms of benefits. And then also, what I love to do is dispel people's notions of that DNA is their destiny. My parents are
Mm,
obese, therefore I'm obese. My parents have hypertension, so you know what? Not a lot to do there. But that really is just the 2%, remember, that encodes for that potential, where we
wow.
have all of these modalities at our fingertips to manipulate either your quote unquote bad genes to work better, or if you're leading a sedentary lifestyle, eating a standard American diet, those good genes can actually be turned down too. So you can turn up your fat storage genes, you can turn down your inflammation genes, and a lot of that's with movement and nutrition. And we'll get into some specifics in a bit.
That's really good. So, I mean, truly, so let's say man or woman, if like, let's say dopamine's high, and this is for like the mother out there that's like, I have to stay on point. I have to release a lot of adrenaline, cortisol, hopefully get a little pleasure by having my morning cup of coffee if I'm going to my job, running my kids around. So you're saying like higher dopamine, which is too much could be too excitatory, which could lead to anxiety. And that could be associated with like estrogen, would be like, water retention and weight gain. So people can learn more about their hormones and their neurotransmitters with these kind of testing. Now, that's what I loved about your testing. I saw your real time testing. Um, to walk us through that, like, I think that with this though, like if somebody was coming to you and said, okay, I get about gene testing, and they give you all their symptomatology, like they'll say, I have this, this, and this. Um, explain to us, I love about, like you said, stress on the environment. I don't want to get it too far away from it. I want you to carry us back into the middle of it. But I'm really intrigued by what you said about like uh, your environmental stress, your spiritual life could actually turn down your good genes or upturn your bad ones. Is that right? Is that how it was put?
Absolutely. So whatever kind of environmental stressor, there's a lot of avenues that can direct that pathway that you just mentioned. So if we have elevated cortisol, it can do just that. We can manipulate our fat burning genes to turn down, inflammation genes up, fat storage genes up. And then, in terms of our emotional health, a lot of the clients I see have been to everyone or seen everyone and they're feeling hopeless, or maybe even from their doctors, they're getting dismissed and belittled. And so that sense of loneliness, despair, impatience, that can really, those emotional aspects, not only turn down their immune powers, but they can even manipulate at the cellular mitochondrial level to turn down mitochondria and energy, and even work at the telomerase, that little telomere cap at the end of the genes, to activate and accelerate gene, cellular aging, which is
Mm,
precursor
mm.
to disease states. So, I mean, it can happen. It can happen in so many different pathways. The way our environment, our emotions, our triggers influence us. So we have to be
Wow.
so careful with how dynamic we are with our environment.
Truly. I mean, so for everybody out there, it's um, when you have like an environmental stressor, literally it can change like the shape of your DNA or your chromosomes. It could actually shift your structure of your DNA. When I heard before, like when you said that the telomeres, and like the telomeres, like okay, some people are gonna ask about that. Like honestly, like telomeres, what are they like? They're like little, like heard they're like tendrils. I don't know. What are they like on the genes?
Yeah, okay, so my favorite, so imagine I'm kind of got like a hipster vibe and I have a little beanie sitting up quite high on my head. That's what they are. So, if I'm the chromosome, then we have these little caps up there. And every time the DNA replicates, that cap loses a little bit of height. And when the cap gets all the way, to my skull, then that's basically cellular death. That cell will, that DNA and that chromosome will no longer function properly. And so
Mm.
that's either aging, disease, wrinkles, everything that we're trying to postpone is kind of a culprit of those shortened telomeres. And so proper
Wow.
nutrition, oh my gosh, if you want to get into it, The Telomere Effect by Elizabeth Steeple, oh my gosh, it's a wonderful book.
Okay.
So she goes into all of these lifestyle interventions, from vitamin D to proper time restricted fasting, all of these wonderful ways to help enhance our telomeres. And I even had a couple specific examples at the end, because when we have dealt with chronic infection, we have a ton of metabolic debris and waste
Mm.
building up in those cells. And unless we clear all that out and declutter it, that's really where those telomeres can shorten as well. So after an illness or even during, it's really important to kind of enhance that autophagy and get out that cellular debris, so it's not interfering with the enzyme that keeps those telomeres nice and healthy, called telomerase.
Wow. So I mean, I love this. So if you keep like with proper like nutrition, exercise, fasting,
Mhm.
you can keep the telomeres, the length of your chromosome, or the length within them to. I've heard that they have the ability to grab onto more nutrition and to grab onto more nutrients that you intake if the telomeres are longer. So like I've heard like they've had like you said, age related. I've heard like you can tell if you're gonna live long if you know your telomere length. Is
Totally.
that right?
Yeah, exactly. They're predictors of age. Absolutely. They do have pretty cool testing. I don't know if you've looked into True Diagnostics. They do a biological age. These are kind of some of the things that they're looking into.
Well, I wonder what mine would be, Emily. It'd be
I just
like,
got mine back. So I'm 37, 38 in October, and my biological age is 30. It's pretty good.
wow, good on you, good
And
on you. Yeah,
cool
you
what's
look young, so I mean,
Thank you. Well, it's cool how they break it down, and plus, I still have room for improvement. And one of the markers, they'll tell you all the markers in which you're good and which you can improve. Mine is hormone health, and we'll talk about cortisol in just a second. But so my aging rate is 0.83. So instead of a calendar year, me turning a biological year, I will be zero point 0.8 on that calendar year.
point 0.8 on that calendar year.
Yeah, so not only am I younger now, but I will age slower than the calendar year moving forward.
So, okay, so you get the test done from the True Diagnostics, right?
Yep. Yep.
I need to do that. Maybe you can.
Oh,
I'll show you my contact info. You got to
totally.
show me that because I need to do that. And I need to find out what if they send it back, Emily, and they're like, "This is not looking too good, buddy. You
That
probably."
is totally okay. And that is absolutely why I love to do what I do, because a lot of the tests I get, the client has that reaction like, "Oh my god, I got some stuff to work on." But that's absolutely fine, because once we know exactly what's going on in your body, you can take very targeted and tailored approaches. All the interventions, from diet, lifestyle, supplements, herbals, homeopathics, everything gets very, very focused, and you can just about reverse everything, as you well know.
Well, I do. I mean, I love doing like a lot of different methylation processes. I have a friend that's down in Dallas, Dr. Miller, and she helps me with that. But I'm also like really looking forward to like I love individual to come on here, and I'd like to work with you, like because I'd like to be able to promote it too. You know, like let's do some stuff, and I'll show people what you do. So I know you're probably super busy anyway, but I mean, at least like I love having you on here. So um,
Let's
this
do
is
it.
great because like you're talking about cellular aging, and longevity is a really big thing out there today. Like longevity and please, guys, you know I don't like to rabbit trail off, but longevity, like okay, your cells get really, really sick, and there's many things, right? And Emily, like you talked about, like hormonal health, you talked about aging, like you can think like EMF field, like electromagnetics, or bad water. I mean, not enough sun. what do you think is like, there's so much bad aging on your testing, you'll see it. What do you think is one of the biggest, or maybe the top things you see is like the worst on somebody's cells and their DNA?
I think I think you hit one of them, and that is EMF, and that's actually what resonated on my current scan as well. What's really interesting, I did a lot of international travel last year. I had a really bad knee injury, so I was in the X-rays and the MRIs. I did egg freezing, so that's a whole metabolic physical process. So I was exposed a ton, and so now kind of moving forward, the plan is reduce any exposure, heal the body from the harm that was induced, specifically as we'll talk about my mitochondrial harm. And then moving forward, I love when you and Dr. Axe are together and you're just all about strengthen, strengthen, strengthen. Let's do that for the support system.
Hmm.
Once we get to the end of my test, I'll kind of walk through the three pillars I like to go through, and we'll call it strengthen. I usually say support, but we'll go with your guys. Strengthen, detox, and then repair. And woven into that, so we're going to talk about my specific test, but I do this per every client. Woven into that is the best ways to activate the genes that are going to repair your system. So for me, that's going to be my mitochondrial focused genes, like the SIRT1 that helps turn on autophagy and turns on all of these telomerase, all of these wonderful metabolic mitochondrial focused genes. So we
Mm.
have some examples of that coming soon. So it's all once you get the specifics about somebody, then you can get really, really granular, get into the minutia, and figure out exactly the best ways to support their system and make it all simple. So for me, I know all of these specific herbs and foods, do that for that gene, do that for that gene. But for them, it just looks like a shopping list, a
Yeah.
really simplified shopping list. And it's, they
It's
don't
like
need to
when,
know. They don't want to know. Of course, I love to get into it, but some
no,
people
it's
like to tell
truly
me,
like,
no,
so if you looked at a like a shopping list, like if an individual got the testing, you could see like how you could lengthen your telomeres, how you can strengthen your mitochondria, how you can strengthen the body to like actually know which gene is probably not acting the best. And you can say, well, you would say, okay, you need to take a CoQ10 or something of that sort to help with this condition. And that would get your cells energized a little better. Does that help too? Because I know you see like, we talk about, um, here, we talk about a lot of frequency medicine, bioenergetics, but with people with chronic diseases and infections, because people, it's like longevity, but I think even in the biohacking world, many times you could see that they're always thinking about how do I turn on my cell, which is proper. Like me and, Dr. Axe talk about it. But, there's so many infections out there. Do you find that could like if you're not getting energy in the cell, it's not going to allow you to get rid of the infection. B, can the infection interfere with the absorption of the nutrients so you can't get energy? So, I mean, I'm not trying to be confusing. I know you know it, but could you touch a bit on that?
100%. So, I mean, let's talk about mine right now. So this is a bioenergetic scan,
Hmm.
what we'll be looking at, right? So it's got those circles.
Yep.
They should all be blue, but what
They're
we're
all
seeing
blue.
is I got some 3 hanging out in chronic stress, or sorry,
Yep.
4 in chronic stress, 1 in metabolism. And so this is going to answer your question here. So I'm going to walk through the most prominent stressed systems, and figure out why are they stressed, and then we'll talk about exactly how to move forward and put it all together in a healing roadmap.
Yep.
And so, it's so, I don't know if it's synchronicity or twisted serendipity or what, but when I knew I was going to come on here, this was back in November, I knew I wanted to talk to you about the benefits of bioenergetics, especially an at-home test kit like this. It's non-invasive. It's so easy for the whole family to do. And I knew probably we would talk about bacteria, probably some parasites, and how helpful this kind of testing is to find what conventional testing often comes up with false negatives. Well, since November, I've come into contact and am now resonating with Borrelia, Babesia, and Mycoplasma.
Hmm.
So who better, I guess, to walk through exactly some of your top content with you. So I think it's, silver lining here is I get to show you what it's like to be 4 weeks now into the healing process of some of these more insidious toxins, how to remain hopeful throughout it, and really kind of like you said, nobody is impervious to these kinds of things. No
Mhm.
matter if I was quote unquote doing everything right, people get a lot of shame and guilt and fear around these kind of toxins. But when we see a test like this, we just know exactly what to do moving forward. So I'll kind of answer that question. So looking at the most stress, that's metabolism. So we're working
Mhm.
kind of at 40%. That is a weakened state. So Borrelia and Babesia, they've now kind of infiltrated the cell from that extracellular matrix, and now they are compromising that mitochondria. Now, to very simplify a complex system, we want the mitochondria to turn food into fuel. When that mechanism is compromised, we now aren't getting the fuel from food, but maybe it's being stored readily as fat now. We're going to talk about at the very end a little, I'm going to peek you into this brain scan. So I'm going to end on the nervous system. And
Okay.
what that brain scan showed was low dopamine and EMF radiation. So I'm going to kind of weave those in on this test as well. So the top of the test, we see these systems, the 14 systems and how the body's represented. And then as the test goes down, we figure out, well, what's contributing to that stress? We look at nutrient deficiencies, we look at toxins, we look at hormones, and then food sensitivities. And so within the metabolic system, I also have that elevated cortisol, which, like we said, impacts our immune genes, our inflammatory genes. It also downregulates our nutrient absorption. So the
Mhm.
digestive system is impaired. It also turns up the proliferation of our bad bugs. So now we've got a little bit possible leaky gut, dysbiosis going on. The second most stressed is we have that immune system. There's so much kind of cool, complex stuff going on here. So, where we see organ wise, we have the spleen. And I know how much you love talking about the spleen, which I think is so great. So, the heart, the center, the chi, it's everything.
Mhm.
So, mold at the year leading up to this test, I was exposed to environmental mold, which then impairs the spleen, opens the door for something like candida, which is exactly what happened. And now the
Mm.
spleen is very much downregulated. um, Now babesia and borrelia come in, and we have some interleukin situation here. So the spleen is kind of tricked by babesia to downregulate its immunity.
This testing, I'm looking at it right now. So I'm not, guys, I'm not looking away. This is really great. I get really nerded out on this. So when like, let's say for everybody that's listening, like they're driving in their car, like it's really cool. It's got this chart and it's got like 100% means minor stress, 80% means like this percent of stress. So when you find that though, Emily, like let's say it was, metabolism, you find what down regulates it, like with the infection. Like for you, it was like Borrelia and Babesia. Do you find like it on the chart? It's amazing. It tells you like some of the things you need to take to help with the infections, though.
Yep.
Basically,
Yeah. Yeah. So that's why when we were talking about, you can, when you were nervous about getting your results, there should be no reason to get nervous or anxious around getting test results like this, because at the very end of this test, you see that protocol, that it's personalized, it's measured. So not only are they measuring your body's frequencies to figure out all of these things, the nutrient deficiencies, toxins, hormones, etc. They use your sample and run it against all the homeopathics, all the herbals, maybe glandulars, maybe nutraceuticals, and they measure it until your sample gets back into its optimal frequency. So they've
wow.
essentially done this trial and error for you. So when I see something like this test, yeah, it's pretty alarming, not to lie. But I'm confident moving forward that the plan laid out, in addition to what I'll fold in lifestyle, diet wise, is going to help me heal, and I'll be through this.
This is great. I mean, do you mind? Like, I'll pay whatever. I mean, like, I want to do it with you because, like, look, like, I'll show you. I'm not trying to get off camera. Chrissy's like, "Don't get off camera, Chris." But everybody out there listening, like, for when I do some self, kinesiology, muscle testing and such, and I'll find it like I have toxoplasma SSR, like from DES, or I,
Yes,
I need mycoplasma because people don't realize how bad mycoplasma is in everybody, like in their spleen. It is
yes.
ridiculously like an epidemic. And maybe I should not say that on camera, but mycoplasma, like walking pneumonia, and people don't realize how bad their lungs are and how much like getting bit by a tick or having some kind of mosquito bite you and you have some kind of infection and like smart silver stuff. I want to do this with you if that's okay.
Oh,
And
absolutely. I would love to. Yeah, you know what? By the time I thought about it, we weren't going to have enough time to turn around to get the results. So I already wanted to do that. So please, let's do that. So yeah, here's my boba kit. This is Borrelia babesia, and I got my little vials. See, I'm currently in it. I'm in week 4 right now.
Oh yeah.
I'll be taking my 20 time potency tomorrow.
Woo! And got this is good. I mean, and not to sidetrack, guys. So like what Emily's saying, like on the chart, if you see it, the cool thing about homeopathics, and you probably could explain a lot better. One thing I think I really love about homeopathics is personally, I've seen some of the most profound results
Mm.
with homeopathics than anything, because my horrible way of describing it, Emily, is if you had babesia or Borrelia, the one thing that when you look on a chart is like you wouldn't get a blood test, or if you got certain types of testing, they would say, "Oh, you don't have Borrelia babesia." And the horrible thing about some of the infections is that they're so good at hiding into your zombie cells, your senescent cells. They're so good at hiding inside that you have to use like a homeopathic to act like a magnet. Like you have
Yeah.
to pull them out, right? And not like, is that what's happening? Like you have this protocol, you've got, you're on your homeopathic. I've heard like during the 4th and 5th vial is probably the most detox you had. So you start this protocol and you start to see like all these things start to work together. You start flushing and getting things out.
Exactly right. Exactly right. I actually have a mycoplasma one as well. It's
Oh,
for arthritis. So that's where my joint pain's coming from. So
oh, can you
yeah,
talk to me
yep,
about
yep, yep. The way the potency works, is the lower the potency, it's the more superficial symptoms. Look at us. The superficial symptoms like the headache, the fatigue, and the rash. And then as the potency goes up, what I'm about to get into, then we get up into neurological, emotional stuff, which the reason I was really struggling after clearing out mold and candida last year, like, why am I not feeling better? What's going on here? And why am I susceptible to these things? And this is what we're going to end on with the nervous system. But I was starting to have panic attacks and being a little apathetic and in things like insomnia, those kinds of things. So most of my symptoms are resonating up in the nervous system.
That's
So
really
that's
great. Keep going. Like in the nerve, because you showed your brain scan, is the brain scan that comes with it shows
yeah,
like the part of the brain that's affected the most. Cause like it shows like Lily guys a diagram that shows the area of your brain that's like colored. It says this is the part that's affected. Is that right?
yeah, exactly. So I think what your producers are going to do is put up the test like on an overlay as
Yep.
we're talking about it, so people are going to be able to see what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll bring in that brain scan in just a sec. So yeah, let's pick up with where were we at with the
Yep.
digestive system. So
Digestive system.
really
Yep.
the small intestine. Another test confirmed, I've got that low dopamine going on, which is where that production resides. Of course, immunity tanks because I'm not pulling in my robust nutrients for my immune systems. It's having an impact on cortisol. It's all very much interconnected. And, I loved learning about this system because, the small intestine is what produces our serotonin and our dopamine. And there's our sense of joy and happiness, and how
Mm, mm.
TCM puts small intestine with the heart. And it just makes so much sense that they would be coupled together with how they inform each other and are informed by each other. So I
Oh,
think that was really cool.
it's really beautiful. It's like, so with the digestive system here, you're at 41%.
Mhm.
And this is really interesting. So when they show it, guys, show you at 41%. Pancreas, liver, gallbladder is doing really pretty well. It has like, so what would on yours, like you say, small intestine? That's what you showed in yours. Like you had small intestine issues. Is that right? Let me
Mhm.
see.
Mhm.
So that to me, and this is not me trying to analyze Emily. I'm just asking primarily. She knows this too, but like small intestine would have to be, like she just said, in your heart when you eat food and you can digest it fully. You pull all the nutrients out of your food, right? Like you just, and people out there listening, like, oh yeah, whatever. I'm like, no, think about it. If you can't pull the nutrients out of your food, you don't get nourished by your food. So in life, you'll have events in your life that won't nourish you. And it shows exactly how you approach life. Things in life do not nourish me. In fact, it doesn't feed my heart, because that's what the nutrients do, right? They go into the bloodstream and go to the heart, give you a heart fire to give you passion. So, Emily, let me ask you a question. How is your passion in life? Do you feel like with your direction, getting better?
Yeah, no, yeah, exactly, exactly. That my mom always calls me B positive because it's my blood type, and that's not how I was experiencing life lately. It was a little apathetic, it was a little reserved, and just so detached from my true sense of self. And so this
Mm.
all just painted the perfect picture as to why. 100%.
Wow. So you
um
got you keep going, keep going. I'm not interrupting. This is really
yeah.
great.
So the other part of the digestive system is, if you scroll down on the test, we talk about what kind of resonating food and environmental sensitivities come up to impact here. And all of the grains came up, which is very, very common when we have things like parasites and that bacteria pop up. They can either mimic gluten sensitivity, grain sensitivities, or start to cause them, with the gut inflammation and permeability that can occur there.
Wow. So guys, when you guys see it, if you guys are listening online, but listening on in the car, if she's showing for barley, buckwheat, corn, gluten, rye, teff, wheat flour, white flour. So like most grains are going to upset you pretty much.
Yep, exactly. Hmm.
So if you guys want to give Emily a gift, don't give her something with grain. Okay. Let's not do that. So you have environmental, you have, man, you've healed up though. I mean, because what it's showing for her is like a lot of things aren't bothering as much. So this is amazing. So you've done really good work on yourself.
Totally. So after
What-
having an extensive mold healing protocol, this is why I was so shocked to see a test like this. How on earth could my system look like this? What's really interesting about Borrelia is how, I mean, if I didn't hate them, I think they're just so impressive. My gosh. So Borrelia, they downregulate some of your hormones that impacts your blood and makes it really sticky. And then they go in and they hide in the capillaries, and
Oh
now
my
your
God.
blood is too thick to get in there. So they've set up these protective barriers around them. And then with Babesia, it secretes this arginine-like compound, which then tells our nitric that we don't need to produce nitric oxide, which nitric oxide would otherwise kill them. So my God, are they smart?
They are. I'm telling you, me and Emily are like, this is like why you guys got to see my face because my mom, she had like a pretty severe stroke like 4 years ago. But one thing we found on her, like she didn't really want to get tested, but she had high amounts of babesia. And you're right, they're so smart. I mean, literally can make your blood sticky. They can hide in your own blood. It's like they can turn off your nitric oxide. And that's why people think, why do I get brittle arteries? Why do I have brittle carotid arteries? Why do my joints hurt? Because they harden your arteries in your joints and your blood's not flowing properly. And so they get stiff. So you're showing this, they're eating up your red blood cells. Keep going, Emily. This is great.
Yeah. Okay. So then we're moving into the nervous system. And right here, what we're looking at, first of all, nervous system is going to regulate all of the other ones. It impacts the immune negatively, the blood, metabolic, and digestive. So now let's kind of look into, well, how I had healed from mold and candida, but how was I so susceptible in my body to these other things? And then how was my body so stressed? Well, even though my body had healed, my brain had not. And so what's going on now is when we look at the brain scan, now we got that amygdala. My poor sweet amygdala
Yeah.
is holding such stress. And so what we're kind of looking at here is we're caught in that limbic loop. And so even though my body has healed from that original trauma of mold, the brain, the emotional system, the whole body is caught in that cell danger response, never fully healing. It's still thinking we're injured. It's still thinking we're injured. So it's pulling all the immune reserves, not fully getting to that healed state. And so then when we're stuck in that cell danger response, it further impairs the mitochondria, decreasing ATP, more anxiety, things like that, neuroinflammation. It even impairs our brain's detox ability. And there's that telomerase. So when we are stuck in that injurious state, it downregulates our ability to repair our telomeres. There we
Oh,
go
it's
with aging and further compromised immune system. So moving forward here, now it made perfect sense. So I had healed, but my brain is just stuck thinking that trauma is still there.
because
You know,
it's
there's
like, would that mean though, like it would be like, since your brain still believes it, that since you guys think about it, like if you believe there's a monster around the corner and there's not a monster around the corner, but you still believe it, your body will still respond to it.
absolutely, exactly. Yeah, we are.
Mm.
My body is still experiencing as if mold is there
That is a
at
crazy.
every level. Yeah.
You get the, like so everybody out there, this is crazy because I've done a huge Lyme detox. I could hardly find any Lyme in my body. But I had Bartonella, striations on my back and such, and I started having like vision issues on my right eye. I did some extra scanning, and I found in different testing, and I found like I had a little batches of Bartonella like, behind my right ear, like up in the
Mm.
sinus. Now, the one thing was right. You're right. Like that's why I want to do this testing with you because part of it, from what I believe, like I've done some cold laser, and it's really cleaned up. But I think my brain still has a huge memory of the infection. Because think about it, like you and I, like you raised on a farm, right? Like I had Lyme since I was 13, 14, probably before that. And I'm thinking your body's like so used to it. Like I always say it's comparable to somebody who's like a kid who just wants to play video games. It's in the not against anybody who plays video games. I'm just saying like that sits in the, downstairs and just plays video games all day. And you kind of get used to that person. You're like, they're just going to sit there and just kind of just be in the house all the time. I think that's his way we view, right? Like infections and such in that manner. And now you're able to flush it out. Like you're able to get those things out.
Well, so moving forward, right? We know how to tackle the Babesia, Borrelia, mycoplasma, right? We've got the smart silver, the vitamin C, the homeopathics. We've got that personalized recommended remedy for my body. But now, how do we heal the amygdala? That's taking a whole different level because I need to retrain that limbic system to not be stuck in fight, flight, and fear because it is just stuck chronically in that fear state that the threat is present,
Yep.
even though the threat is gone.
Mm,
So now
mm,
I started a neurofeedback program. And what's interesting, so some of the emotional resonance that had come back for me in my earlier scans, we look at all of the lobes and the brain parts, and then we go down, well, what's contributing to that amygdala stress? What's contributing to that thalamus stress? And it breaks it down. We get to see emotions, we get to see toxins, we get to see food sensitivities, and then specific modalities for you. So they're two
wow.
separate tests, and they get broken down in similar ways. And so for mine, my brain scan, it was EMF, it was emotional blocks, and it's so fascinating. My emotional blocks on my very first scan was the number one stressor in my brain. So
Mm,
then it not only tells you what these three emotional blocks are. So this is where working with chronic illness is so profound because if that emotional block is grief, well, we're going to find out, and then we'll also give you an affirmation to lean into to help unblock that emotional burden in your brain. And so I
wow.
was given my three emotional blocks, loneliness, which of course we saw that blood, that cardiovascular, that fire, stress, tapping into a sense of joy was really important for me.
So the homeopathics guys, you as a backdrop, homeopathics like the little liquid bottles, and you can put the drops in your mouth, and you can hold them underneath your tongue so they get into the bloodstream more. You also have like these small vials that you'll see on the camera where she can just drink them in. It's basically energy in the liquid energy. So when you can do it, do you have to get neurofeedback, which is like a process where they put like some types of brain pads on your head to like pick up things, or can the homeopathics help you with that, like pull out some of the emotions?
Yeah, they absolutely can. So within that brain scan, you get a whole separate set of personalized remedies, and that will incorporate more of the emotional aspects because that's in that brain section of the scan. But
Wow.
yeah, for amygdala, you could even lean into essential oils because breathing those in, and this is why I keep them diffusing on my nightstand because I'm working while I'm sleeping. As you're breathing them in, then you're getting out of that emotional section of your brain, out of that amygdala, pulling it up into that frontal lobe and helping your body kind of detach from that hyperactivity. And the
Wow.
brain scan will even show you, maybe crystals that are helpful for your specific resonance right now. What are the specific essential oils? For me, it was bergamot, ylang ylang, and lavender. You can do things like music, art, dance, acupuncture. But yeah, I just leaned into that neurofeedback because I had been so curious about it, and
Wow.
just thought I was looking for a little bit more of a strong arm approach here than just some oils.
No, definitely. No, it's as good. So really, when you go into finding out the neurological, you start to work with all the remedies. Is there a particular order? Like if you know your digestive's off, your metabolism, do you go and do you take them all at once, or do you take like them in series?
Okay, fantastic question. And this is one of the beautiful things about the burgeoning field of bioenergetics is because they are measuring not only what your body needs now for hormones, detox, nutrients, but also what it can tolerate. So they
Good.
approach it as the functional nutrition onion, what can your body peel back in that first layer right now? And
Mm.
this is one of the biggest pitfalls I see with people detoxing. They're shopping on Instagram for that little anti-parasitic. They're getting a recommendation from their aunt for that antibacterial. And maybe they're just kind of doing this kitchen sink approach that's either way too much at once, overburdening their liver, lymphatic system, and nervous system. And then they get really, really bad side effects and die off symptoms. And so bioenergetics takes all of that into account, what your body can tolerate right now at this stress level, at this infection state, all of it. And all the way
Wow.
down to babies, every life age and stage.
Well, I mean, if we can though, and I want to just try this, and because I would love to. So because I'm this is what the Ancient Health podcast is about. Is like like see results, and we could like do mine, and then like when mine comes back on, it's simply we can go over it and stuff. Um,
Love that. Yeah.
let's do that. I mean, so in this aspect, the one thing that like for everybody out there listening, it's with homeopathics. One thing that I'm really thankful for is, for instance, like I'll put people on different nutrition, which works really well. But what you'll find is that you can give them nutrition for like 6 months to 8 months sometimes, and then they'll be good. And all of a sudden, out of the blue, an infection could surface. Now, is it layering? I believe it is.
Mhm.
But the amazing thing is when I put them on a homeopathic remedy, like from Des Bio, like they're one of my favorites. Like truly, no, sometimes they'll feel a little detox, but a lot of times they'll go, "Well, doc, I didn't really feel that much." But when I check their systems, in my way of checking with like pulse points, tongue, biogenetics, they're really clear. And it's amazing what your body will do. Like you're saying, when you just clear all the crud, when you clear all the static in the line and the body sort of reads some good information, like they communicate and the livers communicate with the spleen and the spleen's connected with the brain and different things like that. And it just shows that your body could heal if it just doesn't have all that static in the lines, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that's the beautiful thing about homeopathics is as you know, they're not there to treat the actual disease or infection. They're just there to either remind your body, hey, this is kind of what we're meant to do. Don't forget about that hidden infection. So here's a little bit more of it to remind you and kind of kickstart the body's own innate wisdom as it's meant to heal.
I mean, it's powerful, Emily. It's very powerful. And we'll do this. Let's do this. And we're gonna see like we're gonna have all the things pulled up, guys, on the screen. Um, where do you see? Okay, I know I'm sensitive about your time, lady. Okay, but I'm saying, where do you see yourself as you heal?
Mhm.
Um, getting yourself to where all these diagrams are up into like 85% to 100%.
Mhm.
Um, and do you have to? People are going to ask you and ask me this, like, Emily, do I have to take something for the rest of my life? And sometimes I look at them, I'm like, you do have constitutional herbs that your body would love to have for the rest of your life. And there are some things that I'm going to take for the rest of my life simply because my genetics do not produce them. What
Totally.
would you say to that?
Yes, I love this question. Okay, so um, an adage, a very loose adage, is the duration of healing is dictated by the severity of your stress. And so, what we're looking at here, and the homeopathics, they already are a 2 month protocol. So that would be a generally advisable time frame, 2 months, and then maybe you retest. Maybe you've cleared that out and you're ready for the next phase, or perhaps that was enough. And then so that's why I work with clients on a 3 month membership. It's typically how long hormones can take to do some healing, some concrete healing, some detox has occurred. And then I always want to make sure I'm setting somebody up for sustainable wellness. What does that look like to you? What kind of
Mm,
eating behaviors, what kind of lifestyle modifications, maybe what kind of daily supplements, based on just our general needs, a high quality multi with some mitochondrial focus in there, a really good omega, probably an anti-inflammatory, and then maybe something specific based on your pattern in your life. Maybe you're like always susceptible to viruses, or tend toward candida. Then we kind of build in some personalized specifics after that.
Oh, I love it. Because like so guys, if you guys want, I'm gonna ask Emily to send me one of these kits, maybe, and then I'll work with her, and we're back on the podcast, show what's going on in the body. I will say that since I was young, my mom's had a lot of big things with most people do with candida or fungal infection, and I work pretty heavily to keep those things really cleaned up and at bay. But I think it's the memory too. I think that there's a genetic programming that could possibly be in my body that keeps me holding on to the yeast. And it's funny though, Emily, because like sometimes, guys, this is all transparency right here. Like when I'm detoxing, like you're laying it, you lay down at bed, you turn over, and then you kind of get a sort of smell, and you're like, man, something smells a little sulfury. And I'm like, wait a minute, that's me. That is me. Okay. And it's embarrassing, but it's also like, I'm like, heavens to Betsy, I've got yeast coming out. And you can really tell like these small signs and symptoms that, they'll go away after a while if you start really detoxing. So,
Totally.
I mean, this is really good. I'm glad we're going to show this up on the screen here. And then like when we meet again, like we can see what yours is at. And we can see where mine is at. Cause I know that the stress load, like even in the office, it's like, because it's pretty much like the days I'm not filming, I'm just at the office. It's one patient after the other, like every 25, 30 minutes. And it's almost 5-6 days a week, almost like literally. And so I really would be loved to see it. Now we're going to put this on the show notes. We want to make sure that if they want to contact you to become, a client, that you have access to you. Like, we love to end up like saying, okay, where can they find you? I was telling them about your cool name, on Instagram, but to get like access to these tests and find information and how to get it started and how do you explain, where do they find your website and where do they find your name on Instagram?
Oh, just come say hi on Instagram. I love starting the conversation that way. I typically start each client with a discovery call, kind of fill me in on your background. What are your struggles? What are your goals? And then we figure out maybe what testing is right for you. So kind of before you order, it's always nice to have that conversation to figure out what test kit might be best for you. But genetic_garden as Instagram, and then www.genetic-garden.com. The kits are available on there. Anyone can order them. You get a discount, I think, using code Genetic Garden. That way, the cool thing about working with a practitioner is my test is a little bit more in depth. So, for instance, what you're looking at just says a parasite, a bacteria, a virus, whereas mine, I get the strains. And then that way we get to figure out, okay, well, what's your exposure? Where are they coming from? How can we mitigate that exposure in the future? And then also
Gotcha.
the food sensitivities get a little bit more specific in terms of inflammatory versus immune and high versus low.
Well, I got some peeps I need to send to you, my lady. So this is good. This is great. Okay. You're a bubbly, but when we talk about your emotions, I always try to find out a little bit more about my guests. Okay,
Okay.
so a couple questions.
Okay.
What would people know the questions? Maybe they do, maybe they don't. But what would people be surprised or not know about you? Like, what is like a hobby or something that people would not expect to know about you? Like, oh, what do you love to do? Like,
I have my motorcycle license.
wow, you do motorcycle?
Well, so I ride a scooter around town, but in order, I'm a very big rule follower, so I got to be by the book. And if you want to ride a scooter, you technically need a motorcycle license. So I went with the full CHP course, spent a weekend with some rough riders, and got my license that way.
Wow, wow, wow. Okay, this is
I
good.
even got
Like,
asked to be in a motorcycle gang in the Santa Ana Hills, so I was big feather in my cap there.
wow. Are you are you near LA? Is that what? No, Santa Ana's, you're
I'm
saying.
in Orange County.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Orange County. Yeah, Orange County is the best. Oh my goodness, so
yeah.
pretty.
Thanks.
So you're in there. Okay, so what's your favorite music?
Who, I mean, I've got a clock with Tom Petty's face on him right there. That's kind of, I'm a little bit old school. Love the oldies and the classics.
Oh no, no, don't worry about saying that. Okay, so get this. I was with one of my buddies. He has a pretty big podcast, and he goes, So everybody out there is shaking their head. Yeah, yeah. He goes, there's this old band named Weezer, and Weezer is an old '90s band,
Yeah.
and so guys, I like to tell these stories, but my friend sent me this thing with Weezer. So when I grew up in a very strict Christian home, which there's nothing wrong with a strict Christian home. My dad's and I love my dad. I respect the heck out of my dad, and I still, have Christian faith, and it's not, but we couldn't listen to like any type of rock music. But I remember in college, like, I heard Weezer, and I was like, dude, they're awesome. Anyway, here's this point of the story. So I hear they did this acoustic set of one of their songs, and I don't get really nostalgic, guys, but I was like, this kind of making me tear up listening to this Weezer. Okay. So I don't get like that. And then I told one of my buddies this, and he's probably mid-20s or something. He goes, "Oh man, yeah, I don't know them. I don't listen to oldies." And I was like, the '90s is old now, and I'm like, dear Lord, I am.
Painful.
It's painful, I'm going down that route, Emily. So I'm just saying, I'm just gonna go in the sunset. Motley's gonna ride off into the sunset. Um, so
Well,
okay, that's
wait,
beautiful.
Dr. Molly, would you mind if I left you and your listeners with kind of my 7 favorite daily detox habits?
Yes, do it. Let's go
Because
for it.
they referenced, some of these foods that we integrate and activate our genes. So I'd be remiss if I didn't do that. So the way we're building in nutrition to have the most impact is pull in the foods that talk to your genes, right? Because if you take an anti-inflammatory, it's going to work at a localized level, 1-to-1.
Mhm.
But if you eat foods that are anti-inflammatory that turn on your anti-inflammatory genes, it's just exponential, and then it's a systemic anti-inflammatory effect that lasts much longer.
Mm,
So more bang for your buck with these kinds of things. Within these 7 habits, we're talking about activating genes like the glutathione, supportive for MTHFR, a couple of the SNPs there, the SIRT1, sirtuin genes, NRF2, which is our master anti-inflammatory, and then some CYP genes like liver enzyme supports. So my favorite one, first and foremost, is to finish your dish. Learn to top it with citrus and herbs. And they are the most impactful for broad spectrum antimicrobial. And then a highlight on rosemary because it single-handedly does autophagy, lymphatic support, that brain detox, supports DNA as an adaptogen. So, if Kara Fitzgerald's wonderful with the DNA methylation donors and adaptogens. We don't just want a whole bunch of methyl groups. We need them to know where to go. And that's
mm,
what rosemary helps do.
mm,
Number 2 is something fermented. So that's for your gut brain access. Number 3 is 1 cruciferous a day. And that's the methyl donor and adapter.
mhm,
1 tablespoon of nuts and seeds. My favorites either go raw. You're going to get 2 of the most impactful seeds in sunflowers and pumpkin. Um,
mm.
some sort of organ-based something. Now, this is just high nutrient density, extra supportive for the mitochondrial health. And then things like a PEMT gene, which is going to bring down my sensitivity to mold. Um, something from the sea, of course, the
Mhm.
liver enzymes, immune support, thyroid support. And then my favorite way to do this, because a lot of people are averse to sea things, and then especially if you don't live next to the sea, you might feel a little fishy about it, is to get Daybreak Seasoning. They're an awesome female-owned company, and they make seasonings that are filled with all sorts of different dulse and kelp, and it just couldn't be more simple or nutrient dense.
Daybreak seasoning. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, and then for the organ meats, I really love Forces of Nature. They do an ancestral blend, and you can get that frozen in most places. So that's
Yeah.
fantastic.
Really,
And then,
force of nature. Go, keep going. This is great. I'm
or-
writing this
yeah.
down.
And then the final one is just to start to fall in love with tea if you don't already. To start your day before caffeine, have a midday break, and then ideally end your day as well. And doing 2 tea bags is really a medicinal dose. So looking at my test there, right, we're going to support the blood like hawthorn, dong quai. We'll have some immune support with reishi and elderberry. That's what I'm sipping on right now. Some nervous system, some stress support with the ashwagandha, and then matcha. I'm just going to highlight because it is an epigenetic powerhouse. It's a methyl donor, and it also helps that senolytic cells, so helps to get rid of old senescent cells, declutter cells. And then, of course, I'm going to do some tea to support my digestive system, like some aloe, marshmallow, slippery elm, maybe
Oh
some
my
ginger.
goodness. I
Yeah.
do like, okay, to me it's like it's funny you mentioned, I'm not saying it like it's fun because I've got like organ capsules here and I've got reishi and I've got like when you talk about having I need to do more matcha. At night it's really amazing. Like everybody out there, I want you to know like the thing she says, and I'm not trying to prove because I'm doing some of these. It's not that. I'm not saying that either. I think that's really amazing because like I started using like a powder that had slippery elm and aloe and had licorice in it, and I just felt like it tested well for me, and I just started doing it every night. And I used to have these old like furrow lines in the forehead, and this is always represented by the small intestine on the forehead. And after I started doing that, I started noticing like my bloating went down a whole lot, my leaky gut symptoms went away, and my people would say, "Well, your skin's looking better." But it shows that if you take the like you just said, those 7 steps, like my mom's Korean. We used to eat seaweed all the time, and I use a capsule a lot of times with people called alaria. So it's just like it's a basically a sea vegetable that gives you a lot of iodine. And people realize I'm like, no, I'm like, if you could incorporate these 7 things, like you just said, into your daily diet, you know how much like you wouldn't have to do a whole bunch extra if you just did the 7 steps, which is impressive. And that reminds me, I need to take my organ meats here in just a few minutes.
Yeah, they're not, you don't have to get bogged down on doing 7 every day. They're additive, they're wonderfully synergistic, but just aim for, as much as you can. Getting an herb garden is like top rec. It is just so beneficial for you.
Oh, I'm telling you, my they used to always says like, what would you want to, what would you think in heaven? What would you want to do? And I'm thinking, well, you're not going to necessarily need anybody that does kinesiology or acupuncture. I mean, you're in heaven, for crying out loud.
Yeah, true.
And I was like, well, maybe I'll be a gardener. And I used to always say, I'll be a gardener in heaven, Um, but
Oh my gosh, it's the most therapeutic for the
it is.
brain. There's new stimulus every day, which
Oh,
keeps you on your toes. It's like a more tasty version of Sudoku.
introduce it. True. I have my plant over here. You can't really, well, you can. You see this plant here? That's Henry. Henry's my plant. He almost died because I left him in an old office, and I felt bad. I love you, buddy, and I missed him, and I didn't mean to, and he almost died, and he's happy. He's growing, and but when you put your hands and you help your plants, you don't realize how much healing it is. The vibrational patterns. We have plants all in this office.
Totally.
Um,
Well, getting your hands into the soil is that very grounding, and you're connecting back with the frequencies of the earth, which also helps to mitigate all that EMF. So that's another wonderful benefit.
Truly. That's why I'm Italian. That's why I got a little place down on the floors because I like if I put my hands in the dirt or if I put my feet in the water, I ground, and it's so much electrical charge that's transferred back and forth between patients. I was like, I need a big way to ground out. And guys, this has been a really good info session. Um, so we know where you can find Emily, and you guys know where to find us. So if you guys love this kind of information, you want to connect with Emily, remember, watch the show notes. Christy's going to have it in the show notes. Remember, Forces of Nature. We're talking about Daybreak, seasonings. Telomere Effect is a really good book. And, like and subscribe. If you like this, if you have anybody needs to know more about epigenetics, about this testing, send it over to them. And then hit the little bell. I think it's a little bell signal to tell you when a new podcast comes up. And we'll have Emily back on. She has great information, good spirit, and good heart. Emily, thank you so much for joining us. And for everybody out there, if you guys have any more comments or more questions, email us. Let us know. Like, we want to put on good information for you. We're always thankful to be able to help out any way we can. Until the next time, thank you, Emily, for joining us. You're a bright spot. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I'm buzzing. This is awesome.
Oh, great. I'm so thankful. Okay, guys, have a good day. From all of us here at the Ancient Health Podcast, take it easy.